Thank you, Suzanne, for joining us. Would you like to please introduce yourself for the ones that don't know you?
First off, thank you so much, Ezekiel, for having me today. I'm so delighted and excited. My name is Suzanne Lesko, and a little bit about myself. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The first part of my career, I was in the Navy. I had the privilege to serve this great nation. Went to Annapolis, and from there, I went on to become a naval aviator. And then after finishing my aviation commitment, I did a lateral transfer to public affairs. And also worked a lot with special operations. I worked all over the globe, served in missions in every continent with the exception of Antarctica. And so it's been a very fun ride. And in between that too, most recently, I retired a few years ago after over 20 years of service. And now have been doing consulting, startups, technology, innovation, and currently serve as a national security leader with IBM.
I love it. I love it. So what would you say is the line that puts together your whole career in all these different places around the world, different places in terms of, federal sector, Department of War, IBM, small business in the middle? What do you think is the unifying line? If there is one, maybe there's not. Just asking.
Actually, that is a great unifying line. What you just said there, Ezekiel, is the unification, and I would say multifaceted, and it's very, different industries in a sense, but also the experience and I would say it's the global leadership amongst all of it, because in every case, I've always been brought on to teams and organizations for my unique view, and tapping into that authenticity as a leader, and especially as a resilient leader bouncing back from adversity. As you know, adversity doesn't really reveal a man so much as it shows when that actually happens. So it doesn't, you have adversity in your life, and that actually shows your grit and like who you are as a leader and as a person.
Right. I guess maybe we don't learn much if everything is going well.
Correct.
I guess in adversity, I was yesterday in a talk about fortitude, and I think the definition was related to maybe not allow adversity to put you down. I think that could be an effect of adversity. But you talk about resilience a lot.
Yes.
How would you define resilience?
Resilience to me, Ezekiel, is being able to bounce back from a situation that hits you, and you're able to come back with those lessons learned, and you're able to be even better in the next situation. Because life happens, I believe, always for us, although at the time it may not seem like that. But the challenges that happen, and there's a term in Japanese art called kitsugi, where things break apart and you bring it back together with a golden filigree of art. And it's in that getting better and filling in those lines and being a better version of yourself and showing up in business, in life, in nonprofit world, whatever space you're operating in, to be a better version of yourself. And I think also that goes along with having a great team of leaders and colleagues that also exude those same attributes.
I wonder what is adversity, right? I mean, if I have to think about it,
what does it mean to you?
Well, I wonder, I'm just trying to think what adversity I went through. Well, I guess not having a job for some time, that could be something like that is tough. That happened to me. Not having a job, for example, I couldn't believe it. I'm not sure how I did. Well, I guess, I didn't die of hunger.
Well, you're here right now, Ezekiel, so
survive. But you're right, it can be tough. So I don't know, what adversity have you been through that can help you maybe learn, or maybe not you personally, but your company, the organization you supported, maybe in the Navy, maybe in IBM, maybe in other businesses that you supported with these topics?
So adversity to me, and it happens a lot. I think it's, I heard this last week actually in a sermon. And it was that, we think that we can control, right? And that control, whatever it is, will bring us peace, like us physically doing it, mental model, etc. But actual control is just letting go and letting, the higher power take the lead, so to speak. And you actually have a more relaxed, regulated nervous system in that case.
Oh, really?
And Absolutely. So when I think about that, a lot of training I've been through, like being a SEER instructor, SEER stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape.
Mhm.
And it's a school that high risk of capture go through to learn how to survive with honor if captured in a combat environment. And so not only was I a student, but I was also an instructor. In that case, it's a lot of simulation of adversity. Like, okay, if this happened, we do this. If that happened, we do XYZ. And that perceived threat versus a real threat is actually how our body responds in the same. So it actually builds that resiliency muscle. So if you're in a high stake environment, like you're in negotiations, you're trying to figure out an opportunity, you're trying to figure out a game plan, you're in a sports team, whatever it is, you're able to lean back into that and say, you know what, I got through that situation. How would I apply that to this situation? And I think that's also the gift, Ezekiel, of being well traveled, because travel by far puts you in all these diverse environments. You kind of have to figure it out, right? And it forces you to think a different way, to have a different point of view, to get different inputs. And sometimes you're by yourself or sometimes you're with a team. But I found the most, I would say, takeaways or lessons learned have been when I've been in diverse global teams, whether multinational or working at the highest levels of our government. And being able to take in the collective input from that environment and then making an informed decision and not letting the challenge distract you, right? It's like, okay, bring it on, so to speak. Let's solve it. It's very much in how you speak too. Are you looking at the challenge and like, oh, this is a problem? Are you in a very low energy state when you're talking about it? Or are you in a solution oriented mindset? I really feel that makes a difference, and especially solving very complex problems. And in today's world, you really have to be agile. You have to, think about, maybe we need to pivot. Maybe we need to think about this from a different point of view because the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and expecting a different result, right?
Now,
um,
how to maintain peace, right? And let's say you're in a company, you have a lot of stress. Your boss is putting a lot of stress on you, and maybe we put stress on others. How should a leader manage the people that they work in their team in a way to avoid, putting them in a very stressful situation? What is the right type of leadership for difficult situations? I guess being positive would be one way to put it. You gotta take it
I
seriously though. You cannot be like silly positive, right? I mean, trying to make something that is negative like super positive. I think about that a lot.
well, yeah, you could do that, but I think first and foremost, you have to know what the facts are. You have to know the ground truth, and you have to know yourself. Awareness as a leader, because unless you really know yourself and you are candid about your own strengths and weaknesses, you'll never know how to interact with other teammates, nor will you really know how to lead. And I think the greatest leaders, the greatest qualities, Ezekiel, they have a sense of humility, of fortitude, of humor, because humor is really needed in today's, it's a very dynamic global environment. And so being able to know when to have, as we talked about earlier, you're asking about heroic public speaking, the comedic inserts they teach you on stage, your craft. And when you're able to hold that presence and you own it, but you're also very authentic and real and vulnerable at the same time, you build trust. And at the end of the day, trust is actually the greatest currency right now in relationships next to coherence, meaning you know yourself, like you are so aligned, your head's not one way, your heart's another place. You're just so aligned that that is where you actually make the best decisions, especially in high stakes environments.
Suzanne, I love the idea of coherence for relationship, but I'll ask you that later. Can you please tell me about the military effect? What is the military effect?
The military effect, a friend of mine reached out a few years back, and he's a big business development growth in private sector, has multiple experience in various industries. And he goes, Suzanne, I'm thinking of putting together a book, and you're the only person I know. And I want to showcase veteran stories of those that after their military service or maybe still in, how they made that, as I call it, a seamless transition into civilian life, whether that be corporate, whether it be nonprofit, whether it be federal service. And so we put our thinking caps on, and he said, "Who do you know?" So I kind of, went through my Rolodex, and you may know some of the wonderful leaders too, like Julia Bida. She's amazing, and another Naval Academy graduate. And being able to really look at who would be the game changers in this book, everyone from fighter pilots to Navy SEALs to those that are still in serving, whether that be the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps. And what we did was we had a structure of these anthologies, essentially, of what their path was, from where they grew up, how that shaped them, where they ended up in the military service, and then from there, post-service, and what that contribution was to level them up. And they've done a lot of studies and have found, and this is a hallmark too of a lot of amazing companies like IBM, is that they take and they know those superpowers and attributes that veterans hold from being in very diverse environments, and how they are really the value asset, the pinch hitter, so to speak, in creating new ways of thinking, being able to handle high stress environments, being able to think out of the box from a different point of view. And so the military effect really shows how that cascades or it perpetuates what that military service does for what we bring to the table, both in corporate and in the nonprofit world and federal service.
So personal stories on how different, retired DoD members helped different type of organizations like nonprofit, company, organizations. I love it. Yeah, I can imagine how they can bring leadership skills, being able to support stress or resist stress. Yeah, it does make sense. And you feel it, when you have that type of people, you can feel who they are or what they were a little bit, in the past.
Absolutely.
I worked with a lot of them, and they bring a very, very interesting and unique spirit to any organization. I agree 100%. So, in terms of relationships, you talk about coherence. My world is BD, growing companies. And in order to grow companies, you got to build relationships and people need to trust you. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, so what I mean by coherence is really alignment. It's an alignment of your thoughts, your feelings, your gut, your intuition, because really in today's economy, the greatest currency again is coherence. It's trust. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have that trust relationships or can't even get, build, as they say, in like 3 cups of tea, which you're probably familiar with that book, it's building those relationships so that when you are advising or you're in a high stake environment, or you're recommending a certain solution, that your client really trusts you, right? And and it's more than just a transactional relationships, because everyone can do transactional. Everyone can hand out a business card, collect them, at these various events and conferences. But like, how do you really show up in a way that's unique and innovative? And when you're aligned in your gut, in your heart, in your head, and that happens, the coherence, then it's like unstoppable, Ezekiel. And when I was working in a lot of combatant commands and advisors to a lot of high-level leadership, 4-star generals and admirals, we always talked about alignment in operations. And you can always tell when you have it, like in a relationship, there's the tug and the pull, right? It's a little bit of ebb and flow. It's as we say, when it's humming, like an organizational hum, when the values align, the people align. It's really remarkable to be in those types of organizations and lead them, especially. But that's the kind of cultures I create. It's one of the reasons why I'm a culture catalyst within IBM, to kind of see these, the micro things and like, how do we make it better holistically, and really seeing a different point of view in a way to make the whole organization better and level it up.
I confess to you, I'm a transactional person. I hate to say I'm a little bit transactional. I'm trying to help somebody in the short term. In exchange, they will help me, like a little deal.
Where'd you grow up again?
Argentina, South America.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's related to that. But I confess to you,
Muy bueno.
that's a little bit and I have to force myself a little bit to be, but what is alignment really? And how do you achieve it? If I have to say, maybe alignment is to have the best interest of the other person in mind. Is that alignment? You talk about exchanging business cards, you say something like that. So how can somebody, and maybe my question is even transactional, but
you didn't realize that you were coming into a leadership laboratory here, Ezekiel.
Right, right. Well, you're
We're
making me
greenhouse in this.
think. So how to be aligned and being aligned what with what? Because alignment for me are two things that need to be aligned, unite but aligned. Alignment between what and what would be
Okay,
alignment.
so let me ask you this. What do you value most? What are your top three values? How do you
Well,
live your life?
that's a very profound question.
Yes.
I guess I will value more than anything is love. You know,
Okay.
the idea to give, which is, I guess, it is also a virtue. I think it's a supernatural virtue. I can't remember the theology of these things. I value love. I value faith,
Okay.
and I value hope. I guess those are three virtues. That's a very profound question. If you ask me what I value the most, yeah, those three things.
Okay,
Uh,
so faith, hope, and love. So if you were to live your best day, do you feel that in the way you show up in the world that faith, hope, and love like transcend everything you do and in every interaction that you have with people and your clients?
It's a very profound question. I try to, but we always fall short of, in the way we
Why do
try.
you feel you fall short?
I don't know because I have an idea of what my day should be and how should I behave. And at the end of the day, I think I didn't live up completely of my expectations. The plan always, I plan in the morning, but then the day destroy the plan sometimes. That's how I feel, to be totally transparent here. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Well, I think, when you look at your day and you take an inventory of the day, like first off in the morning, the best time to start your intention of the day is in the morning before you hit the tech, before you hit the client calls, all that kind of stuff. And really getting aligned with, what is it that I want to accomplish? How do I want to feel today? How do I want this meeting to go? How do I want to show up in the way to say, a big defense conference or a big Homeland Security conference. Like, how do you want to show up? I want to meet incredible people. I want to add value. I want to be curious. I want to find out what they need, not just pain points, but like, I want to find out who they are as a human. And then
Right.
from there, the three cups of tea. And in that case, like, did you feel emotionally regulated? Did you feel hope and love? And like, yeah, that was a human interaction and that felt aligned and coherent, and that leads to more sustainable trust-based relationships in business ultimately, because a lot of times people, you could again be the business card, business suit, all that, but what really sets apart the amateurs from the pros is when they call you, when they say, you know what, I'm calling on you because I need your guidance on something, right? And it's not just like sign this contract, right? Or provide this service, etc. And everything's currency, not just money, everything, relationship currency, transformational currency, which transformational transactions and, how the transaction is transformational. But if you look at transactional leadership and then transformational leadership, you want to be in the transformational, right? Because that's how you get repeat customers. That's how you get repeat business because the way you show up in the world.
Right. So maybe one of the things is, don't focus so much on short term. Think of the long term.
Yeah, think of the long game. We live in a overstimulated social media, external, everything could occupy your focus, right? But when you really get clear on who you are and how you show up, you'll just keep rising to the top.
Mhm. I'm talking about leadership and relationships. This Sunday is International Women's Day. Any thoughts
Yes.
on that?
Well, I'm excited that you decided to share a conversation on this very monumental day in history. And this weekend, March 8th, marks International Women's Day, and it showcases all the women pioneers that have gone before in our history, in our global history as well. And I'm extremely grateful to be a global leader and having led in multicultural environments and also wear the uniform, Ezekiel, of this great nation. And, how we do everything is how we do anything. And so I'm just grateful to be shoulder to shoulder with other incredible women, mentorship, those that have been with me from the battlefield to the boardroom.
Wow. In IBM, are there any activities that are going to be happening regarding International Women's Day or no?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we have a lot of events happening internally. We also have a women, it's called Witty, it's women in the capital, and different events, people getting together. I'll also be on a panel kind of sharing similar to this, like sharing my background, career, leadership philosophy, how to build great teams and sustain them, especially in this dynamic environment.
And leadership philosophy, what is the leadership philosophy? The way you understand it in IBM. I understand that the IBM CEO is a big fan of the book, The Geek Way. Is that correct?
Yeah, Arvin loves that book, and it's a lot of being a culture catalyst. And so, part of building very strong ecosystems and teams, and I think what's the salient power of the brand of IBM, Ezekiel, is the ability to reinvent themselves, to bounce back, to have collaboration, to bring the best minds to solve some of the world's most challenging issues. And so when you bring those minds together to solve, it's amazing what can happen. And they really bring on people that are innovators, that are entrepreneurial, because a lot of it is not cookie cutter. It is definitely a science and arts. And I am so blessed and fortunate to have an amazing team and mentors. And I always look at I'm a consummate learner. So I never think I know everything. I'm like, who can I ask about this? Let me get a second opinion, because I really believe in it's not homogenous, it's a heterogeneous approach to get different points of view, and then from there make the best informed decision.
And Suzanne, last question about AI. You talk about innovation, you talk about IBM. What are your thoughts on the latest situations in the last few days about AI vendors putting some conditions on the way AI is going to be used by agencies and government organizations? What do you think is the
right approach?
Yeah, the right approach.
Yeah, I would just say it's complicated. And also, at the end of the day, one of the things we really pride ourselves in at IBM is being, what is the ethical case of IBM or ethical use of AI, right? We talk about sovereign AI. We talk about, how do we help modernization? How do we accelerate outcomes for the national security of our customers, right? Our client base. And I think you really have to put your thinking cap on and take it all in and ensure that the right people are in the room making the decisions and how we think about it. Because when you have agentic AI, then you have, generative AI. Like yesterday, there's a lady I was talking to, she's a paralegal. And ChatGPT has been out for a couple of years now, and she was just saying, I think it was just yesterday, she used ChatGPT in her job, and it was like a real estate transaction or something like that for the real estate firm. And she's like, "This is so cool. I put the information in, I got this, and it's all about asking the right question." And so I think as it does take leadership in this space as it continues to evolve. And, one of the great hallmarks and salient features too of IBM is the quantum, the research and development, Watson X, like all this cool stuff and being innovators. And I think when you have the right leaders, the coherent leaders, like I talked about earlier and you had mentioned, I think then we can make right decisions. It's when we get dysregulated nervous systems or people that are just not driven by mission, but driven by money, that you don't have the best outcomes necessarily, right?
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ezekiel. It's been a pleasure.